got a job at a place not too different from this restaurant here. Washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. Now, why did he wash dishes? He couldn't speak English. And you didn't have to speak English to take a dish, put it under hot water, and scrub it. It's people like my dad, it's the teenage immigrants, people who are struggling, who have been hurt so bad in the Obama-Clinton economy. Those are the people I'm fighting for. And the reason Donald lost so resoundingly in Wisconsin is he has no solutions, no answers for bringing jobs back, for raising wages, and we are running a campaign based on a positive, optimistic, forward-looking conservative agenda to bring jobs and opportunity back to America.
Orange Cool.
¿Cuál sería el mensaje para la gente que va a estar viendo la televisión? Quieren saber cuál es el mensaje sobre la gran mayoría que va en contra de ellos.
Our community, the Hispanic community, is entiendo casi todo en español, pero no puedo hablar como yo quiero. I have the problem of the second generation immigrant. I learned Spanish the same time I did English. I mean, when I was a little kid, mis abuelos, ellos no hablan English. But to be honest, what I really spoke at home was Spanish. And you know, as you know, in our community, that's true with just about everyone, and certainly with their kids. So no, I heard the question. I understood the question, and I will say, listen, in the Hispanic community, we have shared values. The values that resonate in our community are faith, family, patriotism. You know, a lot of people don't know the rate of military enlistment among Hispanics is higher than any demographic in this country. And I think the most powerful value in the Hispanic community is the American dream. We're a community who we're filled with optimism. When my dad came to America from Cuba, when he couldn't speak English and was washing dishes, he was filled with hopes and dreams for the future, for his kids, for his grandkids. And my message to the Hispanic community is the very same as my message is to every community, which is we can get back to that economic opportunity that America has enjoyed for centuries. We can get back to the nation that we've been, where anybody can start with nothing. You know, the Hispanic community has been hurt and has been hurt horribly by the failed Obama economy. Now, I recognize that many in the press, they try to convey any Republican as somehow mean and nasty. And they try to portray any Democrat as a champion of the Hispanic community. It seems to me people ought to ask then, why is it that under Barack Obama, the rich got richer? The top 1% in this country earned a greater share of our income than any year since 1928. Those with money and power have gotten fat and happy under the Obama administration. I'll tell you something that I say often, which is an unusual thing to hear a Republican say. I agree with Bernie Sanders. In Wisconsin, just the other day, I visited with a young lady who was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I told her, I said, listen, I actually agree with Bernie. When Bernie says the fix is in, that Washington is corrupted, career politicians in both parties get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests and help the rich and powerful, I agree with you. But the question I asked her is, I said, listen, where I disagree with Bernie is on a solution. If the problem is that Washington is corrupt, that government is corrupt, why would you want more government? Why would you want to expand government's power? What I want to do is take the power out of Washington and back to the people. So my message to the Hispanic community is we can have greater opportunity, we can have more jobs, we can have higher wages by taking the burdens of government off of small businesses. And I'll give you one other message that I think is critically important in Hispanic community, and that is school choice. I think school choice is a civil rights issue of the 21st century. Sadly, the modern Democratic Party, because they are in con to the union bosses and the teachers unions, they fight against school choice at every turn. And yet in the Hispanic community and the African American community, there are generations of kids that are trapped. Education is the gateway to the American dream, and I believe that every child in America has a right to have access to a quality education, has a right to learn and to develop, and that education is how you achieve the American dream. And as president, I will be the first president we have ever had who fights for school choice for every child, regardless of race, ethnicity, or wealth, or zip code. That every child has a right to quality education.
Senator
Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz.
How do you expect to do well with this works together?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about polling is it can change, and it can change quickly. 3 weeks ago in Wisconsin, we were 10 points down. We just won a landslide victory, winning by 13 points, sweeping the state. Here in the state of New York, you know, when I talked about New York values, it was interesting. Just a minute ago, I was meeting with a significant number of Hispanic pastors, of African-American pastors here in the Bronx. And one of those pastors, Senator Ruben Diaz, who was a Democratic state senator who hosted the gathering, Senator Diaz said, I know exactly what you mean by New York values. We fight them every day in our community. We fight them. They're the values that led, for example, Mayor Bill de Blasio. Liberal Democrat on getting elected mayor, one of the first things he did was to try to shut down charter schools in Harlem. Because he is captive to the union bosses who control him. So one of his first actions was to try to throw young African American and Hispanic kids out of the schools that were giving them hope and giving them a life. Those are the values. It's the values of the liberal Democratic politicians that have been hammering the people of New York for a long time. They've been suffering. Well, let's be clear. The people of New York know exactly what those values are. They're the values of the liberal Democratic politicians, like Andrew Cuomo, like Anthony Weiner, Elliot Spitzer, like Charlie Rangel. All of them. Donald Trump has supported, given tens of thousands of dollars throughout the years. If you want to know what liberal Democratic values are, follow Donald Trump's checkbook. He has been funding these policies. Look for people in Western New York who would like to have jobs. Western New York, you've got the Marcellus Shale. You've got tremendous natural resources. In Pennsylvania, we're seeing jobs, we're seeing economic opportunity because Pennsylvania, they're developing those resources. Liberal Democratic politicians won't allow New Yorkers to develop those resources. Apparently, they don't think New Yorkers want jobs. And Donald Trump has been funding those liberal Democratic politicians. Let me give you one more example of the values of the liberal Democrats that have been so hurting New York. The actions of people like Mayor Bill de Blasio, who every time there is a confrontation between criminals and police officers, the liberal Democrats side with the criminals and the looters and the rioters rather than the police officers. I'll tell you, the moment when the brave men and women in blue of the NYPD stood up and turned their backs on Mayor Bill de Blasio, I cheered for those New York cops, and I'll tell you, people all across America did. That spoke to the entire country that when you have politicians that will not stand with police officers and firefighters and first responders, and for that matter, soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, that's an example of how these liberal politicians have forgotten who we are. I'll tell you, as president, I will always stand with the police officers and the firefighters and the first responders and everyone who risks their lives to keep us safe. And those values are American values. They are the values of the people of New York who are frustrated with liberal Democratic politicians who keep hammering the people of this race.
Senator Cruz, I have a question for the youth. Senator Cruz, I have a question for the Bronx State.
Please call it out.
Senator Cruz. How do you plan to benefit the Bronx youth if you're going to take away Obamacare?
Obamacare is destroying jobs. People who are struggling. South America. I want people to have jobs, be able to provide for their kids, and have dignity to work. And Obamacare is also costing millions of Americans for health care. Their doctors, their premiums are skyrocketing. Ask anyone you know whether their premiums have gone up or gone down under Obamacare. Obamacare is hurting millions of Americans. We're going to reform health insurance to make health insurance personal and affordable and put you in charge of your health care and not mine.
Thank you.
I don't know.
That was Steve. I didn't think he was going to turn around. Senator. God bless you, bro. No mercy killing in New York. God bless you, Cruz, again.
Become a president, all right?
God bless you, Cruz.
This is the Bronx. The Bronx is in the house.
What do you make of the people's New York values? That was good. As many as I could.
And a lot of Democratic politicians decided to throw a fit because they couldn't crack it together. Listen, the Bronx is wonderful. This is America. This is a melting pot of who we are as a nation. People of the Bronx are people just like my dad, who came as an immigrant from Cuba in 1957, penniless, filled with hopes and dreams. And we need a leader, we need a president who fights for the working men and women of the Bronx instead of the powerful special interests and the big corporations and lobbyists. That's what we've got right now. I'm fighting for the working men and women of the Bronx, of New York, and of the entire country.
And what have you learned since coming here?
Cruz, what do you think about the safety of this nation? The safety of this nation.
Good job.
Thank
If it's not legal, don't come.